Okay, so Jordan, first of all, thank you very much for talking to the students in this video today. You've got a lot of knowledge that is going to be, I'm sure, really valuable to them.
Great. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So the first question I've got is, how would you describe the role that you play in organizations today? How did your career lead you to this point?
Well, really, I think now what I'm brought onto projects to do is be more of an advisor. I was very lucky early on in my career to have a mentor pull me off to the side and say, look, if you ever want to accomplish A, B, C, and D, then my advice is to get out there and learn all of this. He explained to me that the industry was no longer going to be just concert management or festival management or event management or project management. It was going to be multimedia project management or multimedia event management, and that there was going to be all these new players involved in what was going to happen. So for about 5 or 6, 7 years, I transitioned my career through everything from artist tour management, working with people like Lenny Kravitz or Britney Spears or Colin James or whoever it may be, and learning the art of tour management, which was being able to communicate with the drivers, with the hotels, with the ground transportation, with the touring staff, deal with the politics that were involved in whatever was related to that. But then I also worked for a number of years in concert management, which was a whole nother machine itself. And that had to do with producing concerts with anything from jazz to blues to funk to alternative rock to whatever may be. And that was with the largest concert company in Canada at the time and the largest in North America. And then I transitioned from that point on to working in corporate partners. So over the span of many years, I took the time to learn how all of these various elements of event management or project management fit into these positions, and got actual tangible experience on how to manage them appropriately. And now I find that I've done all these things. People come to me and say, would you come on board and show us the right way to do this? Whatever it may be. And that could be anything from the Toronto Pride Festival to Caribana to whatever it may be. So I've really worked on them all.
So we're going to talk about a number of the projects that you have
Sure.
been involved in. Before we do that, can you tell me what it is that appeals to you about managing projects and managing events? And whether, could you imagine doing the same job every day, an operational type job?
Right. Well, that's a good question. I was asked once about going to work every day and doing the same thing over and over, and truthfully, when you look at something that is a large-scale festival, an example, something like Caribana versus the Toronto Pride Festival. Toronto Pride Festival has, say, 1.5 million people in attendance. It's in 20 square blocks of downtown Toronto, in the heart of downtown Toronto, and it's over the course of 10 days, where Caribana really is this momentous machine that takes over the course of a weekend and has 1 million people in attendance as well. But really, they're completely two different different machines with similar politics. Like, you've got to learn the inner workings of all city services and how things like right-of-way management or waste management or police services or EMS and all those kind of things, how they tie into the project. But you also have to learn about provincial and federal politics and how things like funding and such are going to affect the event that you're working on as well. So going to work every day for me has always been exciting, because I could always find the difference between them and see what made each actual project unique in itself. And I really enjoyed it, Yeah.
It kept you stimulated and interested.
Yeah, well, really at that level of festival or concert or whatever management, you're operating at a zero margin of error. There is a fixed budget. There is no more. You can only go less. There are fixed rules. As I said, when you're dealing with festivals of say something like Toronto Pride or Caribana, there's 20 different city services that you have to take into play and how they affect your event itself. So you can sit at a round table like this with everybody around it and say, my name is Jordan Patterson and I'm here to produce this event. But then you have to go through the table and listen to everybody at the table about what their needs are and how it's going to affect that event. And then you have to be able to think and go, okay, now how am I going to roll that into the big picture and make it actually work, right? And that only comes with that tangible experience that we spoke about earlier.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you talked about your music work and
Right.
particularly your work around concerts and
Yeah.
that type of thing. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what that involved and what the challenges might have been and how you might have dealt with those?
Sure. Well, I started out in the entertainment industry really at the bottom. I started out working on crews, building the sound, lights, production, staging for large-scale rock concerts, but would also work at the club level as well. And so the one thing that I've always done, truthfully speaking, is that anyone or any organization that I ever worked for, and I would always look at the person that was leading the team and I'd say, I want to know what you know. And I would go to that person and I would say, my name is Jordan Patterson. I'm here. I want to do the best job possible, and it's your job to mentor me or your job to give me direction that's going to advance me and move me forward. And in a lot of cases, you'd be surprised. People are very receptive to that because everybody wants to be part of a home run, and everybody wants to be able to say, I assisted this person in what they know or how they move their career forward. I always give credit to people that took the time to show me how to do something or whatever was important. But as I said, I started out at the bottom, working in crews, did that for 2 or 3 years, really for the importance of understanding that side of the industry. Because what a lot of people don't do is they don't take the time to transition their career through the various elements of what's happening. So there's poor or broken, in some cases, lines of communication in various areas of an event. So you've got a guy sitting at the top or a woman, and they're unable to look at clearly what's happening around them and understand it because they've never done this job or they didn't take that part. They went to school, got a degree in sports event marketing and transitioned into events and have the theoretical background of what's going on, but they don't have any tangible experience. And unfortunately, in my opinion, my humble opinion, that limits your ability to produce a successful event or project. I think it's important, if you're going to have success, to be able to communicate with all people involved. And as I said, that's really the approach that I took. As I said, I started out working in crews, then I became a runner for a concert production company and was a runner for about a year, which had me working for all the bands or productions that would come into town. And whatever they needed, I'd go out and get. I'd make it happen. And you become very, very resourceful when you're put in those positions. Then I became a production assistant to the production manager for the concert company, and I had to do with scheduling or whatever it may be, and get other elements of the concert ready and prepared. And then eventually I was promoted to the production manager. And that position itself, I oversaw southwestern Ontario pretty much, everything from Guelph to Windsor. And if we did KISS, for example, I would do 5 nights of KISS right in a row. It was a new night for everybody in each city, but for me, it was the same thing. So I would have to be at the venue at 6:30 in the morning as the transport trucks were backing in, giving direction to the people involved. Once again, all the positions that I've just mentioned are all involved at that level of concert management. And I would have to be able to communicate with them effectively to tell them what my expectations were of their positions. And unfortunately, you're the last guy to leave. So until the trucks are then packed up that night and on their way out, you're the one with the key to lock the door behind you to say, okay, we're done this venue, move on to the next. So in a lot of cases, you're getting 3, 4, 5 hours sleep a night, and you're going from one venue to the next, and it's 5 days in a row, and then you got a couple days off to recoup and go back to it again. But the entertainment industry was really good to me, and but as I said, I always looked at what it was that people did around me, and took the time to try to communicate with them and encourage them to teach me what they knew. And in the early 2000s, corporate partners became really heavy in entertainment, and you saw people like Garnier or L'Oreal or Toyota or Starbucks or whatever it may be, Pepsi, which Pepsi's a huge umbrella with Aquafina and all these various partners underneath, wanting to partner with all of these large entertainment stars. And suddenly you then had to understand what their needs were. So they would say, look, I just paid $50 million to be part of this entertainment project. I need my banners across the front of the stage here or hung there or whatever it may be. And you would have to be able to think on your feet how that's going to affect the audience, or how it's going to affect the artist or the overall show, and be able to make the decision if that's something that can actually happen or not, without offending somehow some other partner that was involved in the actual event itself, and knowing how they might feel. Because the one thing about corporate partners is that there's multi-layers of sensitivity, because you'll have an automotive partner on board with a technology partner or a hair care product or something, and they all want center stage and their brand to be out front. So you have to be able to say to them, well, I can put you here and put you there and put that there, and know that it's going to work. So when you get to the venue's not going to have a problem with it either. So, but luckily for myself, I had done all those positions and took the time to learn them, and that prepared me for later on in my career of producing large-scale projects.
So you moved on from that to
Yeah.
large-scale projects, as
Yeah.
you say. And one of those that you were involved with was Pride in Toronto.
Correct.
And so can you talk about what you did there, what the
Sure.
issues were that were involved?
Sure. Well, the Toronto Pride Festival is the largest single event produced in Canada, or the city of Toronto at least, and I think it's the second largest Pride Festival in the world, really. They just had World Pride, if I understand, in Toronto in 2014 or something to that effect. But my job with that festival really kind of bloomed. I was brought on to do one thing, and they were in a transitional year where they had a new director or associate director and a new director and some other people. And I had experience in corporate partners and festival infrastructure and production and this type of thing. So I found myself kind of wearing multiple hats, and really my position went from being a production manager of sorts to being festival manager of infrastructure completely. And I found myself working closely with the corporate partners division of the festival, advising them on best practices and how and what I thought would be suitable for them to make deals with their potential corporate partners, and how those relationships would affect the overall festival. Plus, the infrastructure of the festival itself had me dealing with all municipal, provincial, federal, government offices, so and all city services. So I had to build a functional plan that worked for everybody involved, and that in itself, when you're dealing with something that has 1.5 million people in attendance, there's a lot to be concerned about, and really. The one benefit by the time that you reach that positioning is that you're used to taking on information and holding it. So I didn't necessarily have to write things down. I could have somebody come up to me and go, what about this? And I could go, do this. Because I had, as I said earlier, that tangible experience, and I knew that this is how this was going to play out. I knew that what their concern was this, and if they did what I advised, then this is the way that it would work. So a lot of, as I said earlier, past positions really came into play with Toronto Pride Festival, and that's one project that I really enjoyed, just for the fact of that it operated with a zero margin of error. You know, you weren't able to make any mistakes. There's too much liability involved from personal care, people care, that kind of thing, and there's just the safety plan that has to be in place, the right-of-way management plan for, you know, because you're dealing with road closures, you know, so suddenly you're sitting with city services, and something that you thought you'd never have anything to do with ever in your life, you're suddenly sitting with them redirecting traffic around your event, which something like Toronto Pride, as we said earlier, is 10 square blocks or 20 square blocks of downtown Toronto. So when you're looking at how you're going to cut traffic off on the flow of this street and how you're going to repass it on this street and this and that, there's a lot of people and a lot of politics that comes into play, because there's some guy who now suddenly doesn't have access to his home, you know, and you know he goes to his city councilman, and then his city councilman comes to you, and then you have to say to the city councilman, well, look, you're going to have to work with me on this, and go back to your guy and explain to him we have no choice but to do what we've done, and these are our reasons for it. And it's not only making those decisions, but it's ensuring that those decisions are held. So when you say that the road's going to reopen at 7 o'clock and that guy's going to have access to his house, or that building or that business is going to have flow of traffic in front of their business, it's actually going to happen, you know. So, but that festival, that was. Yeah, that was at best. That was really interesting. It was a really wonderful opportunity to take part in something that was just huge, over the top, momentous. Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating experience.
Yeah, it really was.
And you were also involved with Nuit Blanche.
Yes. And
can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, Nuit Blanche was really interesting. My mother was the founder of the Fine Arts Department at the University of Waterloo, so I was always raised in the arts. And what the city needed, the city had won the right to produce Nuit Blanche, be the first city outside of France, Paris, to produce it in North America. And they put the position out there, and really what mattered with that job is it wasn't as much that you could produce a festival or understood infrastructure. There was greater sensitivities. What it was is that you had to be able to do all of that, much like any other of the festival or events, but you also suddenly had to deal with 30 curators, their vision of how they saw their individual zone and what they wanted to do, but then you had to also deal with 126 artists and their installations. And that's what I was wowed by, because you had some artists sitting there going, man, you don't get it. I'm gonna have a car hanging like this, and there's the car hanging from a tree, and there's water coming out of a building window, and there's all this, and you have to sit there and at all times not lose the confidence of this curator that you, as the production manager or this event supervisor, that you're going to be able to deliver this event exactly as they see it. So in a lot of cases, truthfully said, I had to learn how to tell people what they needed to hear, knowing what I was going to do, but without losing that core vision that they found most important making happen. And as I said, that had 100, like I can't remember now, but like 126 or 146 individual art installations spread throughout the city in 3 dedicated zones, and 10 curators, and I think each curator had 15 principal installations that had significant budgets attached to them. And as I said, we were procuring spaces and taking over buildings, and that level of art is really interesting, because there's a level of patience that is involved in producing those kind of projects that you really have to be able to apply, because if there's ever anybody who doesn't understand the needs of other people, it's an artist to a certain degree. All they're focused on is what they want to make happen, and they're hoping that you get it, and it's your job as that guy to communicate to them that you're right there with them and that you're going to make it work, but Nuit Blanche, it's great that you brought that up, because it was and will forever be one of the feathers in my cap that I'm really proud of producing. We had, I think, 650 or 700,000 people in attendance that year, and it was revered as a huge success by all the city services and governments and those that were involved. And I also had to write all the contracts for that project, for all the individual art installations with the artists and the curators, and so really I built the basis of what now the city of Toronto is producing that festival on. And so it took a lot of understanding, know-how, and hope that it would work to make it happen, really, truthfully. Yeah, so.
Great event.
Phenomenal event, and it's and I'm really glad that Toronto has been able to maintain it and keep it as one of their principal functions per year.
Absolutely. So you also got involved with Caribana and helped to develop it.
Yeah, really. Caribana came kind of after I transitioned. I was manager of events and on-site promotions for House of Blues concerts for the whole country of Canada. So that was dealing with all of the corporate partners related to the concerts and events related to concerts across Canada. And so I had left that, and Caribana was going through a very I don't really know the right way to say it, but it was problematic. Caribana's always had some issues attached to it, and I kind of lucked into that job, actually. A friend of mine called me one time and said, asked if I had time for lunch, and I said sure. He said, there's a project that's happening that I think that you'd be perfect for. Would you mind coming to meet me to hear about this? And I said, sure. So we were up for lunch and we were talking, and he said, look, let me be straight. He said, this festival is Caribana. And I just went, whoa, because every year in the paper you heard about the theft, the fraudulent stuff happening within the structures of Caribana, and how it was this multi-million-dollar platform that could never make money, and everyone was like wondering why it always came underneath and failed and this kind of thing. So I at first said no, that I didn't want to be part of it, because truthfully speaking, and take this as advice, think thoroughly through the projects that you involve yourself in, because they can either make your career or they can break your career. Because once you've been part of a failure, it's hard to rub off. You know, people will always remind you in the industry of what you didn't do well. They will also say, this is what he did well, but you will not be able to get rid of something that didn't work. You know, that will forever be there. And I was really afraid in coming on board with Caribana, knowing the theft and stuff that had been involved in that platform for decades. I had to think that through. But when I did take it on, it ended up that everything that I assumed would happen did happen and more. I had to work directly with what they called the Festival Management Committee, and once again, the position that I was hired for as artistic director kind of bloomed, because what I realized is there wasn't a guy to do this or that or whatever it may be. So I found myself consulting on best event practices for Lamport Stadium and how to execute the launch and at Nathan Phillips Square, and so I found myself wearing many hats and doing a lot of different things. But in the end, I was really proud of that, because that was the one year that both the provincial and federal government came on board and said, if we don't get the right people in place, we're not funding it. And I think that to be the guy that they picked to do it, for me, I'm really proud of, because there are a ton of people out there that could have done that job. But to be the guy that they picked, I was really proud of, because not only I got the job, but that was the one year that it worked out. And then immediately following, Scotiabank came on board and picked it up, and now of course it's a huge success, but something that I just will comment on briefly is that a lot of what I found that people wanted me to do in my career, especially the last 5 or 6 years of my career or 10 years of my career, was they wanted me to parachute into existing projects and fix them, and that really is only possible if you have the direct, tangible experience of what's required to make it happen, because you can't assume anything. Assuming at that level, that doesn't work. It's the same as I said to you earlier about cause and effect versus common sense. Unfortunately, a lot of the industry that you and I work in, and that the students work in, operate on common sense, and common sense really doesn't work. Everything that you will do moving forward, I guarantee you, and you'll find this out, everything is going to be based on cause and effect. And you're going to make this decision because if you do this, that's what's going to happen. Or if I do that, this is what's going to happen. That's cause and effect. Common sense is very limited. There's a very limited space for it to work within the industry. Unfortunately, I am very active in LinkedIn and social media and stuff like that, and I weigh in on a lot of these groups where people are talking about what they're doing, and unfortunately, I can truthfully say that I just hear a lot of bad information being shared because people are I'm a firm believer of I went through a stage of my career where I would go in for an interview, or someone would call me about a job, and they'd say, well, you've got all this experience, but you have no education. And I would sit there and go, oh, and then I'd have to accept some lower pay or something like that, and then they'd give me the job or something. So really the last 10 years of my career, no one's asked me about anything to do with education. All they care about is that I have this tangible experience. And the reason that I'm telling you this is that I'm a firm believer that I like technology. I like things like Eventbrite and Guidebook and whatever else. And this is all really important. And it's important if you're going to hold these positions to be knowledgeable within your field and to know what's out there. So when you have this client, you can say, I think this platform is best suited for you, and I think this one's best suited for you, and to know how it works and the difference and that kind of thing. And that will come with education because that's what you learn. But I think it is imperative that you get out and you bite the bullet and you go just do the job. And if that means you got to start out down here and you've got this degree, this postgraduate degree, well, who cares? Because in the end, you're going to be better prepared by the time you get to this position, because you're going to have learned all of these things and you would have done them, and that will, I'm confident, propel you a lot further ahead and faster than a lot of your colleagues. Because in the end, what people want is experience. They want know-how, and that only comes with the ability to do the job.
You've talked a lot about communicating with people and how important that is as an aspect of project management. Presumably that is what you think, and for me, what do you think beyond communications are the most important skills for a project manager to have?
Well, really, I think, communication's number one, really. Like I worked on tours when I was working as an artist tour manager, where we had 20 buses and 20 trucks. And to be able to communicate, you're the tour manager up here, and then you've got 20 department heads, everything from catering to wardrobe to production, sound, lights, whatever. But the ability to quickly process information and make a decision that you can stand by and stand behind, I think is just as important. And most importantly, to have confidence in yourself is a key factor to your success, because you got to know that they're all standing there going, what do we do? And they're looking to you to give that direction, and if you don't have confidence in your own decision, and if you're faking it because you haven't had enough experience in this area or that area to make this decision that will, and I guarantee you it will present itself at some point, then you're going to be guessing, and that's no good. So really, I think self-confidence comes with know-how. Know-how comes with experience, and I think that they are just as important as communication.
Thank you. And the final question that I've got is that people who are watching this will be embarking on their own careers soon.
Yeah.
You've talked a bit, you've provided students in the video with advice on the way you think they should approach project management.
Yeah.
If you could just maybe reflect on that area a little bit more and say, what advice would you have for them at the start of their careers based on your career experience?
Well, really, I was lucky in my career experience that I knew that I had love for music. So I took the time to look at what would be the best way for me to cut my way into this world, right? Unfortunately, in the early 2000s, when I was first working out in that industry, there was a lot of innovation happening. And so, as I said, I started out as a runner, and then became a production assistant, and then a production manager, and then a promoter rep, and then, manager of events and on-site promotions. That was all for the same company. Nowadays, you're going to be hired as the manager of on-site promotions and whatever, and that's going to be your job, and you're probably going to do something within that area of the industry, corporate partners, for many companies, but all within that, that area. The chances that you will transition through all of these various levels or facets of the industry are very doubtful, to be honest. But I would encourage anybody that is given the opportunity, part of working for a company like Live Nation, which is the largest concert promoter in the world, is that part of what they look at as your pay or compensation is the fact of the prestige of the industry that you work in. The bonus of that is that you may not be paid very well, but you're provided opportunity to do amazing things. And if you can focus in on stuff and go to your manager, go to your director, go to who's leading the ship and say, I want to know more about this. I've got this part down, but I want to know more about this. You would be very smart to do so. The other thing too is that there's a lot of companies like Live Nation now are a niche provider of a platform. They produce concerts. Now things are based with these marketing and advertising firms who have huge budgets, but work with a zero margin of error, that represent major brands, and it's all experiential event marketing, right? So you've got these firms who have 30 clients, and these 30 clients all want to be part of this area of the industry or that area of the industry, and they say, here's our money, go into it. You may want to look at the opportunity to work for an agency like Young and Rubicon, Y&R, Dentsu, Saatchi, and say, get in at the ground floor and work your way up, because you will be eventually well compensated working for someone such as that. And most importantly, you'll get an opportunity to learn a lot of really tangible, factual information while doing so. Somebody said to me once from an agency that I was having a conversation with, they said, we hire slow and fire fast, and that gives you some insight. You're paid extremely well to know what you're talking about and to be able to make informed decisions that will affect the overall whole project. And if you're sitting at a table with a group of people and there's $30 million at stake and Toyota wants their best bang for the buck, and you've got a great idea, you need to bring it forth. And the only way you're going to do that is if you've had the previous experience in some other way or another of working within it and say, hey, I've done this before, what if we try this? That kind of thing, right? But I guess what I'm saying is that it's really important, I think, to have a good idea of what it is you want to do first. Take some time to think about it. Go to George Brown College, get the postgraduate sports event marketing program. It's very well regarded. They've got great instructors. It covers a great basis of stuff. The University of Waterloo project management course, it's very well done. It covers a broad range, huge umbrella of information. But then take the time to see what find out where it fits into the industry that you hold the most interest in, and figure out how you're going to apply what you've learned to it. And make sure, most importantly, that the people that you're working for are real. Everybody's on LinkedIn nowadays. Look and see what it is that these people have accomplished. And most importantly, look and see what it is that the people that have worked for them say about them. Are they good leaders? Are they good communicators? Do they have good ideas? Will they throw you under the bus in a heartbeat? You know, like these are the things that you got to know, and especially now with the way that the industry works, is that it's to be honest, there's a certain level. It's very fast moving, and it can be to a certain degree very cutthroat, and you don't have the time to fail. You know, my advice to you is to be very informed and to be prepared to move forward at all times.
Excellent. Thank you, Jordan,
Thank you
for
very much.
being interviewed today.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
This will be valuable, I think, for the students.
Good, thank you very much.